video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppelliser.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So how's everybody doing? Good, I hope? Well, hold on. Here I am. How's everybody doing? Good? Everything is good here. Um, like I've said before, sometimes dull is underrated. Dull sometimes is not dull. Dull is good. Dull is like everything is, just flowing along, you know, the rhythm. Um, let me see. Well, no, wait, let me take that back. I did have, as you know, I have all my little dogs and everything, and they're getting on in age. And I mentioned this a couple of shows back that as they keep getting older, you realize you start doing this mental prep, if you can say that, that eventually they're going to be dying. And, I've had dogs before that have passed away and stuff like that. And, but I have one of my little girls. She's about 13. I noticed something was going on with one of her eyes. And bottom line, we don't know. I don't know if she got stung by an insect. She scratched her cornea. I Bottom line, we ended up having to take out one of the eyes, that one eye. Um, and I was like, oh. And because vets nowadays they give you all these options. Well, you can do this and you can do that, and I didn't even know they have such a thing as a veterinary ophthalmologist. And I said, no, she's 13, and she's doing great, by the way. I already have another dog that got attacked that has missing one eye. It's like I got two dogs with a missing eye, pirate dogs. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Dull is underrated because when stuff like that comes along, and yeah, it's a reminder that's the bargain we make. As a matter of fact, I think I mentioned this when I interviewed Pamela. My God, I can't remember her last name. She's an animal communicator. That we were talking about this, and I mentioned after the show how that's something that we kind of like tend to forget about when we have pets and animals. That chances are we're going to outlive them. And even these smaller dogs, which usually have a longer lifespan than the bigger dogs. Yeah. So it was the only good thing out of this is that the vet called me. Yes, it was they took they examined her before they do the surgery. And they called me up and they took a blood and she goes, no, she's in great shape. They were surprised she's 13. She's in great shape. Even her joints, because they looked at her all over the place and she's in fantastic shape. It's like good, I guess, but she's gonna be missing an eye. But yeah, that kind of deal. So yeah, as a matter of fact, where she's around here, my girl. Her name is Slim, by the way. Slim is around here somewhere. She's like a little Yorkie terrier mix, which I rescued from a guy who was selling her in a parking lot, which I don't think he was the owner. I have a feeling, for lack of a better word, he stole her from somewhere. 'Cause he was a really weird, unusual guy walking around a parking lot of a supermarket. And the officer who was doing off duty there calls me up, you know, and he said, "Hey, you want to come over here? I think he's selling the little dog." I was like, "Oh God!" So I went, and it's 13 years later. Slim is here with me, and yeah, 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 yeah. So let's move on to something else. You know, I always like to look at stuff that's going on in the news, and one of the things I was looking at this time because I was like, no, no more UFOs, no more UFO stories. I'm going to take a break from the UFO stories for because it's like one week you get this, and then the other week you get that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to look at one of my favorites, which is the cold case, we've talked about this, how DNA is breaking all these cold cases that are really, really cold. Now, the first story, okay, that I'm going to, and I've talked about this before on other shows, how sometimes the challenge with some of these cold cases is to actually identify who the victim is to begin with. Okay. Because from there, you could go in a lot of directions with this. But yeah. So, anyway, this first one, this is if this ever populates, because I guess my internet is acting really slow. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I can get this. I don't know. Uh, no, it's not. Okay, let me see if I'll see if I can bring up the other one. But I'll just tell you about this one in the meantime. Anyway, hold on. Here we go. Let me see if I can get this one. Hold on. Which was, as a matter of fact, it's one case has to one I had written about before, and they came up, and then this other one was that they finally were able to ID. Let me see. Okay, come on, computer. There we go. Hey, yeah. Okay, this is from yesterday. No, 2 days ago. This is what was known as Oak Grove Jane Doe. Okay, she was exhumed. And she was Oregon's oldest unidentified person case. All right. Now, she was taken from the Willamette River nearly 80 years ago. And what happened, and I find this happens when I do research, is she was recovered, partial remains of, she was found in 1946. All right. And this is in a burlap bag in the Willamette River. Okay. And then additional remains were found throughout the year near Willamette Falls, and then the original site. I guess I don't know if this was because her body, she was dismembered, or if where she was thrown into the river came apart. Now, the authorities at the time determined that the remains belonged to a petite white woman, likely between 30 and 50 years of age, and they determined the cause of death to be blunt force trauma to the head. All right. Oh, yes, and I take it back. And the body was dismembered after her death, which, by the way, sometimes unless there is blunt force trauma, they can't tell. Somebody's shot, especially when they find just skeletal remains, sometimes they can't. Now, despite drawing national attention, the case stalls. Now, this is the interesting part. Her remains went missing from law enforcement custody in the 1950s. They just realized, okay, where they had buried her remains back in the 1950s, or maybe originally in 1946, because I know that usually after they recover a Jane or a John Doe, and they usually put them in a pauper's grave or something. And somewhere, somebody, I guess, found some type of, like, an arrow, and that the remains were likely buried at the Mountain View Cemetery in Oregon City. They were exhumed. All right, now they're going to go under for forensic um, testing. And the reason why I bring this up is I've, I've done research on a lot of these cold cases, and you'd be surprised how many times they can't find the body after they buried it to exhume it, to do DNA now that it's available, or to do further DNA. All right. In other words, maybe they exhumed it earlier a few years back, but the DNA was like, no, we can't. But now they've advanced so much with DNA analysis that before what wouldn't have rendered any sample, now they can. But this is very common. That, remember, this is a long time ago. The people that did it are dead, and all of this is paper based. Sometimes the records are destroyed, they go missing, there's a flood that comes along. You'd be surprised. And every once in a while, something like this happens where they actually either find a box of evidence that all of a sudden they discover it, or they find maybe a note or something, or somebody kind of says, hey, the only place they would have interred a Jane Doe would have been over here. But bottom line, they found her. Now, let's go to my other case. I wrote about this here in South, well, in South Florida. I'm not in South Florida now, but at one point I was in South Florida. During the 1970s, there was a series of murders called the Canal Murders. All right. And the thing is that all these women were dumped. At that time, back in the 1970s, early 80s, was on the edge of the Everglades, between west of Miami and on the edge of the Everglades. So they were calling them the Canal Murders, the Flat Tire Murders. They had a series. There were some investigator that said, no, this is the same person. Others were saying, no, this is, a different person but it was really weird because they were dumping the bodies real close to an area called, well, back then, there was this little lonely outpost called Andy Town, which is where hunters would go out there. They had one traffic light, and they would go out there, when they were hunting. It was a place to grab a coffee or something. And this, as a matter of fact, it started out back in 1947. All right. And by the 70s, it was a gasoline station. But I've been out there even now. This was the middle of nowhere. So anyway, this is back in, okay, there was these two girls. This is in June. We're talking here. Okay, because this is, 1973. Okay, this is 1973. This girl right here, Nancy Lee Fotts, she came from New York. All right. She's found out there. A week later, there's two girls. They're both 14, Barbara Schreiber and Belinda Zetterauer. Okay. They're found the banks, again, of a canal out there. And by the way, anybody that's familiar with South Florida knows that even on the edge of the Everglades, there's a lot of canals out there that, of course, they use for drainage. Only a few miles north of Andy Town. They're discovered by a group of people out there fishing. The good thing was, if there is a good thing, is that they had not been dead that long. They were dead like a day. All right. Now, what they had done is these girls were telling their parents, hey, we're going to spend the night at each other's house. And in reality, what they were doing was they were going around hitchhiking and going to parties. Now, there was a teenager who gave him a ride in his motorbike. And when they're discovered, they had both been killed with a 45 caliber firearm. And they believed that because of the blood evidence that they had been killed there on site. They weren't like killed somewhere else and dumped. Now, again, they were middle school students. All right. Now, the police ran all over the place. They looked at all the evidence. They couldn't find anything. In May of 2025, just a few months ago, the Broward Sheriff's Office, Broward County being the county that they were killed in, announced that they had solved this 50-year-old double homicide. All right. And what happened was they finally spoke to one of their girl's classmates. And I don't understand why it took so long for them to talk to her. Honestly, I don't. She tells the police, yes, I saw them when they were hitchhiking and they got into a white van with two men in it. They even asked me if I wanted to go. And my dad had told me, no, you can't. I don't want you to go hitchhiking. And this is basically what saved her life. All right. So she tells Broward Sheriff's Office this. Finally, they had gotten in 2023, 2 years ago, they were able to take some DNA from their clothing and they matched it to a guy named Robert Clark Keebler. He died in 2019. All right. And they also found a partial profile of another male. This is why they didn't announce it in 2023. And he was Keebler. Just so happens a week after these girls are killed, he is stopped by Broward Sheriff's Office because of a road rage incident. And guess what he's driving? He's driving a white van. All right. And he had a very lengthy criminal history, which started like in 1970s, charges for armed robbery, sexual assault, aggravated assault, and weapons. They find recently what they really confirmed was that the second man was a man named Lawrence Stein. He died in 2005. But like Keebler had a really long, lengthy criminal history. All right. So, bottom line, they're going to come, the jurisdictions are saying that they're going to compare to see if any of the other murders, they find them linked to them, or but the thing is this, these guys were committing crimes not only in Florida, California, Arizona. So I'm thinking, you have to think, are there any other cold cases that they're going to be able to tie into these guys? Depending on when they were there, that kind of deal. So yeah, I wanted to follow because I always talk about the advances of DNA. Number one, to give the victim a name, because from there you can go extrapolate who might be the perpetrator. All right. Or in some cases like this other one where they lost her altogether. So yeah, the I think that it's super interesting because unfortunately you'd be surprised if anybody's gone onto the Doe network. There's a lot of remains that are never ID'd. Or even there's some perpetrators that they don't even know the name of their victims, so they don't even know if who they did away with. So anyway, let's get on to the good part, because there's my 2 cents worth of interesting news in cold case world. Now, our guest today, this is the first time he's been here on Stories of the Supernatural. His name is John Vines. He grew up in the college town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. All right. He's an avid traveler. He's explored the far corners of the United States and many countries around the globe. He's the author of the fictional book, The World is Angry. I'm going to read you a synopsis of it, and maybe this will help you understand why also I introduced the show today with the cold case information. This, by the way, again, quote, this is a synopsis from the book, The World is Angry. Adam never expected Houston to be anything more than a fresh start, a place to settle, to leave the past behind. With Peter, a sharp-eyed detective, and Laura, whose effortless charm keeps them both grounded, life feels steady. But when a brutal murder in New Orleans catches their attention, everything changes. The victim's body, carefully staged with a cryptic message, is more than just a crime scene, it's a statement, and it's only the beginning. As more bodies appear, each arranged with eerie precision, Adam, Peter, and Laura find themselves drawn deeper into the mystery. What starts as curiosity turns into an obsession, a desperate attempt to decode the killer's twisted logic. But as they unravel each clue, they begin to realize that this isn't just a faceless murderer leaving a trail of bodies. It's someone with a purpose, and someone who may be watching them just as closely as they are watching him. So help me welcome John to the show. How are you doing today, John? Oh, let me go. There we go. How are you doing today?
Hi. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here and talk about the book and just talk about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
type
Because
of
I
type
mean, I
of
know your book is fictional, but
yeah,
unfortunately, that scenario that you're painting there, like in the synopsis,
yeah.
it's more than common, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying before, you were talking about all these cold cases,
Hmm.
and yeah, when I was doing the book and I was getting into the storyline, I was intrigued by different murders that have happened that I've read about in the past, and yeah, I just wanted to capture that. I wanted to try to get inside the mind of a killer and what motivates them, what takes them to go across that line and do things that are unspeakable that we want to do, because the serial killer is kind of just a different type of killer in our human history
Hmm.
that kind of like it scares all of us. We're scared of that type of situation because it's something that we feel like could happen to us. It could just
Sure.
happen to a common person, just like you're describing these other murders.
Yeah, these are just
Oh,
regular people that.
yeah, and they just got caught at the wrong time, wrong place, and unfortunately, and when you were talking about it, it's really interesting because I was thinking about like, well, yeah, yeah, if you identify these people, these cold case, you would then have to start think about story their lives, like what was their daily routines like, what were they
Right.
doing on a daily basis to try to, because you're right, the killers are dead, so
Yeah,
how,
that's another thing. It's like a lot of
how are
these
you
cold
gonna
cases,
like
that's what
find
they
the
end up
killer?
being.
Because one, there's two things. One, did the killer know them? Likely, maybe not. Maybe it was just random and they were just the wrong place, wrong time. And then you just got to say, well, if that's the case, what was their daily routine like? And the day of the murder, what was that like? Was it a big city? Was it a small town? What type of people would interact? Or you would have to kind of comb through so many different details if you could, because it's so far back. It's like 70 years back. And it's just like 60.
Right, right. That, yeah. Sometimes even the people, like even that first case that was from 1946, everybody that was around is That's it. They're
Yeah,
pushing up daisies somewhere.
yeah,
Detectives, office workers, family,
exactly.
any person that you can say, "Oh, I'm gonna talk to this person and see what they're willing maybe now to talk about that maybe back then they weren't." That's it. They're not around anymore.
Yeah, but I remember when I was growing up, there was a couple, like there was in North Carolina back in the '90s. There was this killer on the highways, and everyone was so scared because this guy was a sharpshooter and he was killing people as they were driving.
Wow.
Everyone was like petrified. So what I was trying to do with this story is like first I didn't even start off
Okay,
kind of.
hold on. I'm gonna
Well, go
interrupt you
ahead.
real quick.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
I'm gonna these two guys right here, these are the two men that ended up killing the girls.
Wow.
Okay. Now, and the reason why I looked at this because you just said that who were they? I don't understand. You have to understand also these were two 14-year-old girls. Like who would get into a van? He's not so bad. The run of the right Lawrence,
Yeah,
the blonde guy,
yeah. He looked normal.
he kind of looks okay. You should have seen them though, what they look like now when they were aging. But this guy right here,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, you know,
He looks like Charles Manson.
doesn't he?
Yeah, it's kind of like
It's like,
you got the psycho look going
it's
on.
like, oh my God. But yeah, anyway, continue with your story. What were you saying as far as
Yeah, it's just
the
like
shooter?
I think with this novel, I wanted to create some tension because I started off like having a character novel, and I was like, oh my god, I can't go anywhere with this. So I said, well, I need some tension. Every story needs tension. So I
Hmm.
decided to go down the whole serial killer because it's like that moment in time, like September 11th. Everyone knows where they were when that happened.
Sure, of course.
And when I had this incident when I was growing up and this shooter, everyone knew exactly when that happened. So I had to have a situation where someone does something horrific. And serial killers are ones not to hide. So these kind of cold cases are interesting because some serial killers, I guess, want to hide and run. But some of your kind of famous serial killers are kind of, they like to showcase themselves. So I wanted to have a showcaser of a killer. One that, one, like you were saying, how do you get away with things? You have DNA these days. But
Yeah.
I wanted this person to be like, for serial killers in my mind, I was thinking they must be really smart. Because one, they get away with murder multiple times. And when people get on the track of it, they still can't catch them. So I was thinking serial killers can't be dumb people. They're pretty smart and they think about every angle of what they're doing. They're like chess players.
Hmm.
So that's how I wanted to explore that. Because I was thinking that's probably how it would go. But the twist in my story too is the serial killer is killing people and he's doing it in a way that's artistic and he wants the world to see that. He's based it on Greek mythology and he's based it on like artwork and he wants to kind
Hmm.
of put his victims in this kind of angle of art, if you will. And
Was this like his fantasy though in his head?
yeah,
Was
it's
that
like this fantasy. That's kind of like that's his thing.
okay?
And that's what he became. That's how he became a killer because he just felt like, well, this is what I'm good at. And a lot of times we do things that we're good at, and sometimes maybe someone's just good at something, but it's not what we decide as society should be good. But you're still going to do it, right?
Right.
Because one, you have to drop the morality. You go like, well, I don't have any remorse. I can just do these things. But
True.
in this story too, is this killer is actually tied to one of. There's three protagonists, and he's tied to one of the protagonists.
Ah,
So it's kind of like he's doing this kind of tracking these murders as he gets closer to Houston because he has a motive to get back at one of the people who harmed him in his life.
sure.
And one of the protagonists is kind of like, well, I want to chase this person too. So it's kind of that angle too. It's not just a serial killer he's doing awful things and it's got the whole country like saying, "Oh my God, who's the next person? Where's his next victim? And how is he doing this? Because he's doing this in ways that allows him to, like you were saying, DNA captures people, but sometimes if you just hide under society, you can get away with things. I mean, I think it's harder because you got cameras everywhere in today's society, but you can kind of like murder people, and that's the thing. He was murdering people and doing it without being seen.
I think what's really hard for people sometimes to understand is when a person murders another person who's a stranger because you have murders
Yeah,
of love, revenge, hate, you did me wrong in business, there's a passion, in other words, or a
yeah,
vengeance. But when people look at you're killing a person you don't even know sometimes.
yeah.
And it's and I believe also that sometimes it's the most difficult ones to solve, which is
That's
that
true.
stranger on stranger crime.
Yeah,
Because first of all, like I said, usually police look at, okay, if they know who the victim is, okay, who was around their boyfriend or, ex or neighbor or something. But when it's not somebody that has any connection to that victim,
Yep.
it's really hard. Even, and I would say now with even with DNA nowadays, which is obviously has gotten really well, I think that for lack of a better word, I'm not a serial killer, but I imagine no victim, no crime. If you can't find,
Yeah.
even though they've convicted lately some people on circumstantial evidence, but still, like you said, if they're really smart, they know how to go about it, that either the body's not found or they put it someplace where the forensics or DNA is so degraded that
Yeah.
they can't do anything with it.
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, he didn't want to hide himself, but he was so confident that he could get away with it still. Like I say, like he's not going to leave fingerprints. He's not going to leave any messiness. He's not going to leave a trail
Right.
where he is. He's a kind of trailless, if you will. It's kind of like it'd be almost like if he was a CIA secret agent that just kind of disappear. And that's the way in the book I portrayed him. And what he did, this serial killer, and I think what I was trying to do here is like you were saying, like if you don't know anyone, you just do it. It's kind of like you have the serial killer who gets off. It's almost like a high to them, so they can
Hmm.
kill someone who they don't know because that's their high. That's what gets them excited. That's just me thinking that could be one scenario. But in
Hmm.
this serial killer's perspective, he wants to study people and he studies his victims. And then he justifies going like, well, I'm doing this because of this or this and this. Like I explain why he did what he did to the people he killed. Each one has a
Why
reason.
they were chosen, in other
Yeah,
words?
why they were chosen. And,
Okay.
and that was kind of him saying like, okay, this is my justification and I have control. For me, sometimes you do things because you have control and
Sure.
if you can get away with it, you will do it and you'll justify to yourself that I'm in control of this situation. It's almost like godlike. I can do what I like, and then I don't have a hard time dealing with that. It's almost like they got rid of all the morals in their life though, because that's a line. Like what causes someone to cross the line to do that justification? Because a lot of times you don't want to hurt someone else because one, it feels bad to hurt someone else. It doesn't feel
Sure.
good, and then killing someone, that would just be like that's like the ultimate hurting
Right.
someone, right?
Exactly. But you know, even back as far back as, and I'm sure there was prior ones, but even Jack the Ripper that
Yeah.
was sending those notes or those letters to the newspapers, you know, taunting the police. And they said that he was directing the letters were addressed to the police, but he was smart enough to send it not to the newspaper, but to a distributor. In other words, he wanted, like you said, everybody to know about him, even though the ones he was actually taunting were the police.
Yep.
Like that, like you said, it's that I don't wanna get caught, but at the same time, I wanna show how smart I am,
Yeah,
and you can't
and
catch me.
and then I mean, I was reading this book. It was a serial killer in Chicago, late 1800s, at the Chicago World Fair, and it was a book recent. I can't remember, but this guy, he was a doctor, but he was kind of a guy that just took advantage of people.
Yes, K.J.
He was a
Holmes.
con
Yeah,
artist,
he was
and
yeah,
and unfortunately, being a con artist, he also had like sexual like desires when he did. So he got sexually excited when he
yes,
killed the women.
yes.
So I wanted to explore like, okay, you have someone who's really smart. He's a con artist basically, but he's a con artist slash serial killer because in the process he gets what he wants from people, like a step up, and then he wants to get rid of that because yeah, I benefited from you, and then I get rid of you. And he had like an incinerator in his like house where he get rid of the bodies. He had all this kind of planned out. So that's what I'm saying. These serial killers are sometimes 2, 3 steps ahead of any kind of
Oh,
person,
no, they some of them go to
especially.
lengthy, plan you know, you
Yeah,
hear about the ones that are like the, opportunist, you know?
yeah,
They'll see, somebody walking down a lonely road and go, "Hey," you know, or somebody let's say a woman that her car broke down on a lonely road, and they're like but then there are the other ones, like what you're describing, that they go through all this process of it's like you said, that fantasy, I gotta have things a certain way,
yeah,
that control angle, I think, that a
yeah.
lot of them have.
But in this story too, I didn't want to be too much creepy or creepish, so I didn't want him to kill women because that's kind of your
No,
stereotypical.
I know, I'm just
Yeah, the
saying that
serial
it
killer killing women. So I had him all kill men
oh, really?
because I
Okay.
remember my partner at the time, she's like, "You're not having him like kill women and like having all that
She's like, wait
brutality."
a minute.
And I was like, "No, I wanted it to be like, since he's a guy, I wanted him to pick guys, and but ultimately." One of the protagonists is like he has a connection to the protagonist, which is woman. There's three. There's the two guys,
Hmm.
and there's the woman, and he has a connection with the woman, and that's the chase
Let me
between.
ask you something. At the beginning, none of your protagonists realize the connection to him, right? Do they even what even?
No, I mean I mean, all the protagonists have. So, like I said, I like to have character histories and talk
Hmm.
about character. So each of the characters have a past, and they're trying to resolve that past.
Okay.
So in Laura's case, she has a past that she hasn't really truly told everyone, but that past kind of goes to that serial killer,
Okay.
and in her own past with her own kind of situations with others that could be that are kind of tied to the story.
Hmm.
And then the other two characters, I mean, the narrator is Adam, and he's telling the story, and they're all came to Houston, and they're just escaped their past. So we learn about their past through the storytelling that I
Okay.
have set up. So yeah, I mean, they don't know about it, but it's kind of like
So they all have
it's
like there's
you
a
kind
lot
of
of
have to
different like
read and
skeletons in the closet that they've got going on in their head as far as
yeah, you're thinking about things, and then on purpose, I kind of wanted to explore. I didn't reveal the narrator's name or the killer's name until further in the story,
okay.
and you're trying to figure out, well, what's going on here? I feel like I might be getting set up for something that is going to surprise me. So I try to play with that, and because you go first person narrative, and then I was doing second person narrative in some spots to make it more a little bit. Who is it? The serial killer? Because the serial killer is telling his perspective, but then
Oh,
the narrator,
you got the serial
yeah,
killer. Oh,
telling his
wow.
perspective. And I try to kind of like when you read it, it's in like italicized print. That's
Okay.
saying, well, these are the thoughts of the serial killer and what he's doing at certain situations. So I was trying that technique, if you will.
Okay. So in other words, it's not just strictly from them and maybe, oh, the
Yeah,
the police found this. You're getting information from that
yeah, it's
character, the
switching.
serial killer,
Yeah,
as to how they look at the situation or what motivates him.
yeah, because I mean, everyone I think wants to tell their story to the world, who it
Sure.
be with just family or just friends, and this is him attempting to say like, well, this is what I did, and this is what I'm trying to do, and this is how I found it. Because it's like I wanted to progress. Like the serial killer, probably he had a normal life. I mean,
I was about to
before.
ask you, do you ever talk about why he ended up being or doing what he
Yeah,
did?
I have a story. I have that part of the story about how he came to be who he came to be,
Okay.
and what drives him down that path. So yeah, he's on a trip, and he just kind of realizes it's kind of like we have moments in our life where we had to make decisions. I call them oh shit moments. Like, oh shit, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
I'm on this
Yeah, I
path.
think
I'm going
everybody
on
has
this
plenty of
path.
those. Yeah.
So, and he has that moment where he's just lost, and then he says, "Well, what am I going to do with my life?" And then he starts exploring that, and yeah, it just leads him to go like, "Oh, this is what I like to do." And then he has a situation where he's being kind of victimized, but
Okay.
he realizes that he's more powerful than the person who's trying
Victimizing him.
to victimize him.
Okay.
So then he gets kind of that rush, if you will.
So in other words, he goes from victim to victimizer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Believe it or not,
so I
that
totally,
happened.
I was trying to explore that, like, because yeah, I wanted to. I mean, for me, it's like motive. Like, what's motive? I'm always thinking about motive. What causes
Sure.
someone to do what they're going to do, and then cross that ultimate line if it's something that's outside our society norms, right? What's going
Hmm.
to make us do?
Yeah, that's it. Murder like that is what society's biggest taboo among, that's at the top of the list.
Yeah. So
Uh,
that's kind of that was the story arc, if you will,
hmm.
and then everyone who's kind of read it, they're surprised about like, well, the ending, what happens in the end, because these two, the protagonist and the killer, are chasing each other,
Okay.
and you don't really one doesn't realize that they're being chased until a certain point, and then it becomes clear when they know they're actually kind of encountering or close to encountering each other. So
So let me ask you, when that character, the one that has that connection to the killer, is it an aha moment, or is it like a a, a trail of crumbs that eventually they realize, wow, wait a minute, this is connected to this person? How does that character
well,
realize?
yeah, I mean, it's she's with one of the protagonists, and she comes out with that whole background saying, because I said everyone has kind of a history to them that they haven't
Right.
really disclosed. So she comes to that, but also another one of the protagonists is being told by the killer, the serial killer,
Mm-hmm.
about it, and that person's like, "What? No way, that's not happening," and blah blah blah. So it's kind of like it's finding out from like the killer's perspective, and then also she's telling one of the others about her own background and how she came
Okay.
to know this person.
Do one of the other characters are the ones that kind of point her, like, oh, after she talks about it, or is she by herself, does she start realizing, wait a minute, I have some type of connection to this
Well,
person?
she knows that who the killer is.
She does. Okay.
But she doesn't, and she discloses that she knows the killer, but she doesn't really go into details about what her relationship
I understand. I understand.
or the killer.
So
And
she's
so,
like a little bit in denial kind of deal?
yeah, she's just given, like you say, it could be breadcrumbs. She's given a little bit, saying like, "Oh yeah, this guy, blah blah blah," and then
Right,
there's
right.
more details later as the story's being told. And
You
that's
know
the
what?
hard thing with storytelling. It's like
Yeah,
when you got
yeah.
something outlined and you're going from A to B, you have to kind of take your time from going to A to B, even though you're like excited, saying like, "Oh, I want to tell you everything right now, real quick."
Sure,
In
yeah, of
a
course, and it's like,
paragraph or a
it's a
page, but
short book.
yeah, but no, I have to like tell you in like chapters. I can't tell you all at once. That
Well,
would
you know what? One time I was researching an article that I wrote, which was called "My Boyfriend the Killer." And
yeah,
it's surprising because some of these women get involved with guys that have a history of murder.
yeah.
And across the board, with very little exceptions, they always thought they were going to be the special one that he doesn't kill.
Oh wow.
It's incredible to think,
See,
you
they could
know?
like convince that person like I can solve him. Actually, that's a part of
Right.
this book. He is solved at one point, but then he gets off the tracks again.
Well, you know what? One of two things. Either they think like you, because I can redeem him,
Yeah,
whatever, or the he'll tell them, oh, they give him like, oh, it wasn't really, it was accidental, and they believe it. And you're like, really? You
well,
know,
the killer in this instant wanted to be redeemed, but then it didn't work. He tried. I mean, and that's kind of like I think addiction.
sure.
Sometimes you're addicted, but you're addicted for life, and hopefully you can stay off
That's about
whatever you're
addiction,
addicted
I'll tell
to,
you that much.
and then you might go back off. I mean, you might go back to it, right? You never know what weak moments you have or things like that, right?
Well, they had that guy, the BTK killer, that bind, torture, kill, who went dormant. I think it was like for 10 years or 14 years or something.
Yeah,
That sometimes even these profilers and psychologists, they themselves don't quite understand why some of them just decide to stop doing it. And
yeah.
sometimes go for years. And then usually there's some event or triggering event which makes them start killing again. But yeah,
I think that can happen. Like Robin Williams, for example, he wasn't a killer, of course, but he was an alcoholic, and then he
yes.
stopped for like 20 years, but then he started back up, right? And I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. Sometimes these things you can just deal without an addiction, but sometimes, I mean, I think the addiction is with you for life. It's just whether or not you can
Oh no.
control it or stop it,
If
right?
you listen to some people who deal with addicts, they'll tell you there really is no cure. In other words, that person, even if they stay sober for years and years and years,
Yeah,
they kind of have that's like an ongoing battle they have inside themselves. Usually it gets better as you get older. Like, I'm not going to give in to whatever their addiction
yeah,
is.
sure,
But yeah, and let's face it, if you have something like your killer who's getting maybe an adrenaline dopamine shot every time he kills, plus sexual gratification, that's
yeah.
a hard that's a hard addiction to
Yeah, and
overcome.
you can get rid of. I mean, you can get away with it. That's the thing. It's like sometimes that's the high too. It's like, oh, I got away with this, and it's
Yes, yes,
and then
they
it's like,
get this like
yeah,
I outsmarted them all.
But it's also a cycle because you imagine they probably do feel bad, but they feel bad for just to quit for a moment, and they feel like I wanted to explore that because it's kind of like, yeah, I feel bad, and yeah, I want to quit, but oh, I need that rush again because that's
Hmm.
kind of like the mundane part of life.
Let me ask you something. Was the
Yeah.
profile on your killer was, how sometimes you hear that they'll kill other people who they're substituting for the one they really want to kill that some maybe they loved. So
Yeah.
they just end up killing similar people. Was that the thing with him or no?
No, I never explored that. It's a good
Well, I know you said
question.
men, but you know.
Yeah. I never explored. I think for him, I wanted to put an artistic bent because I really like certain Greek mythology. So,
Mhm.
for example, one of my favorite mythologies, and I try to intertwine this in the story, is the story of Tantalus. So, Tantalus, if anyone doesn't know about it, he was a guy that the gods really liked, and they really like just hanging out with them, like Zeus and stuff like this. So,
Mhm.
I'm paraphrasing things,
Sure.
but he didn't like the fact that they had so much control, and he wanted to try to fake them out. And he was kind of a half god himself, and he decided to kill his son, which is crazy, and then chopped him up and put him as food and tried to trick the gods, thinking that, oh, you don't know everything, and the gods did know it. So what they did is the way they punished him is they put him in this kind of place where he was in prison, and whenever he wanted something to drink, the river would just dry out just right at his
Wow.
fingertips. And whenever he wanted food, he would jump for it, but it was just out of reach. And to me, that's kind of a parallel to life sometimes. Sometimes you're
Yes.
looking for a job and you just get rejected over and over again, or you're chasing this or you're chasing that, and it's just frustrating. So he was chasing someone who was one of his victims who was kind of
Mhm.
at that part of his life where he just couldn't get that break. Everything was just slightly out of reach. So it's kind of the story of Tantalus, and I thought that was very kind of
That's
metaphorical.
very, yeah, those let me tell you something, those Greek gods, they were like but I know that a lot of the stories,
Yeah,
they're like that's a very hellish type of punishment,
yeah,
you know? You're
yeah.
gonna
But but some people
suffer
just
with
work so
thirst and
hard,
hunger.
and then they just can't get the things that they desire. So
What
yeah,
was that, movie that came God, it came out in the '90s with Michael Douglas,
the
uh
game.
no, not The Game, this was prior to The Game that he plays the guy that the fallen the oh my god, that he's like a an office
Oh
worker,
yeah, falling. I think he's like in
fallen, right?
LA, and he's
That
just
he just like that day, everything goes sideways for him, and he
yeah,
just something in his head just goes, "Whoop."
yeah, it just cracks. Yeah.
Yeah, like that rejection, like that one more, that what is it? That straw that broke the camel's back kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's people have this all the time. I think we have 8 billion people on the earth, and I mean,
Mhm.
even like some weeks, I mean, I'll be like, man, everything's going wrong today, and I'll be like, the
Oh,
next day,
yes.
what's going to go wrong today? It's like just little stupid stuff,
Sure,
it just
sure.
gets in your way of your kind of daily routines or whatever.
Did you hear what I said at the beginning of my intro that I said dull is underrated? I'm
Yeah,
not kidding. That's why I say that. I say that in relation to what you just described, that there's times
yeah,
that you're like, "Man, I'll settle for dull."
yeah,
Like, dull as in my regular routine where the expected actually happens because, you know, sometimes, yeah, I think everybody, you get that feeling the universe is picking on me
yeah,
kinda
yeah,
deal.
exactly. Yeah, God, he or she is out there, and she's like, she's
She's
messing with me. She's a comedian. She's like bringing things in my, and it happens at the weirdest times, like
yeah,
when you haven't had something happen for a while, like and you're thinking about it, and then all of a sudden it happens, and you go like,
sure.
what's going on? All right, so
Yes, and then you ask yourself, am I I'm gonna go over to the woo side for a minute. Am I being psychic and anticipating it, or did I manifest it because I was thinking about it?
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, which with the what is it, the first the chicken or the egg kinda deal, but
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, there's times where things it's like not like one thing. It's like, man, it's like, okay, anything else? Like, is it gonna how the roof gonna fall in on me? Like, that kinda deal. I think that happens to everybody.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, that's just our experience of living. Like you were saying with the dogs. I mean, I mean, have a dog, and it's like
mhm.
you love being around them, but it's heartbreak when they kind of leave you, or because they're gonna live shorter lives than you.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
and it's like, yeah. So,
Yeah, let me tell you, so it's one of those things, and like I said, you expect it, but when starts things like that start happening, you're like, okay, like put on your big girl pants because you knew that something along this version was going to happen sooner or later. But we're all cowards, I want to say, when it comes to
Yeah.
things like this. But and I'm going to say also, and I don't know if you tell me this is maybe the emotional makeup of your killer, the character, that
Okay.
at some point, maybe when they were young, there's some type of emotional fragility and something hurts them that sometime affects who they become down the
Yeah.
road as far as their how's this their disconnect from social norms, like don't kill people. Is
Yeah.
that part of what was going on with
I
your
took
character?
the opposite. So I can see that, and I can see that with people. But I did explore this, and I talk about it in the book. So for him, he's so unemotional about what he does as a killer. It's because he had no emotional put on him as a child. His parents and his upbringing was more of one where they said, like, I want you to go out in the world and explore yourself. I'm not going to give you any guidelines or give you kind of instructions or help you out along the way.
Okay.
So it was kind of a cold relationship that he grew up
Hmm.
in. So
Right.
it's almost like you might not hate someone, but you might not have no emotion for someone
That's just for a child. That's horrible. That's horrible.
because I kind of had that like when my dad left, and it's no harsh. I don't have any hard feelings towards my dad, but
Hmm.
my dad and my mom, they divorced, and he kind of just went on and did his thing, and my mom kind of grew up, and she's a strong woman, and it was great. But since he wasn't in my life, there was nothing there to have emotion towards. So now
Right.
it's like there's like no emotion, and I don't have any hard feelings towards him.
Right. Not
But
good or bad. It's like,
it's just unemotional. It's like you can sometimes when you think about someone, you think about and you have good feelings for them or you have bad feelings. Sometimes you think about someone that's it's neutral. It's just
yeah,
nothing
there's
there.
an absence of like, yep.
So this killer is more like I think having an unemotional type of thinking can actually lead to like, oh, I can kill someone and I don't really care about it, right? I don't have any attachment to it because
So
that's
in
the
other
way.
words, he wasn't a born psychopath. He wasn't one of these that you
No,
say,
he wasn't born psychopath, but he has kind of no yardstick, if you will, towards social norms. What keeps
okay,
us from not
sure,
hurting each other, right? Because we have some
sure.
basic rules like I don't want to hurt someone else because how would it feel if someone hurt me? I don't want to be hurt. So if I don't want to be
Right,
hurt, then someone else shouldn't be hurt, right? That's kind of a
right.
basic rule out there, but there's other basic rules too
Yeah,
about
but you know what? And the reason why I say this is there's going to be psychopaths. Not all of them kill people,
yeah,
but the only thing that stops them is, let's say, you're going to get in trouble. In other words, they don't feel bad about it. How's this?
yeah,
All they
yeah,
fear about is I don't want to get arrested and go to
yeah,
jail or prison. But they are very controlling in and of themselves.
sure,
But then there's the ones like you said that maybe they like that cat and mouse thing of like I'm gonna outsmart the police and I want to prove I can get away with this.
yeah,
Um, and you know what I'm gonna say, and sometimes some of these guys don't get caught because the incompetence of who's investigating it. You know
sure,
that, right? Sometimes
yeah.
they
It's
do
probably,
drop the ball.
yeah. Especially back in the 40s, like you were saying, it must have been very easy to harm people because you could
Hmm.
really get away with things. Hell, back in the 70s, even the 70s, I think I was listening to some NPR thing. This is kind of off topic, but there was like 1,000 bank robberies a day in Los Angeles area in
Yes,
the 70s, right? You think like,
and it's
wow,
like what?
how did that happen?
I'd
It's
be
like
like,
I
you want
thought
to
that
be a
was a
teller
thing
at
of
a
the
bank? You sure?
20s or 30s or something, but it's like so. But
Yeah.
now things are a lot different
Well,
because
because with
cameras
digital,
everywhere.
everything now is so digital that they say
Yeah,
that most of these banks don't have like the cash they used to have back then, like on hand.
yeah. But like you're
But
saying, it's kind of like you don't want to get caught because you get caught, then your whole life changes and you have to go to
hmm
jail or blah blah blah. So a lot of times people just say like, I don't want to get in trouble. It's a pain in the ass. So
right,
that
right. But the moral compass part of like this is the wrong thing to do is not part of the equation.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like I don't want to go to prison, you know.
If you don't have the moral compass, then you're always trying to solve things too. Like you can solve anything, and it doesn't have to be murder. But you'd be like, oh, I just got in trouble. How do I get out of this? Oh, I got to do this and do this and do this to cover
Sure.
up whatever I
No,
did. That's wrong.
there's some of them. that I think some of the profilers, they call them organized killers, that they're
Yeah,
the ones, like you said, that they organize, they prepare things, and they already have either a way of getting out of there. They have the plan B and sometimes a plan C,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
how they get away with stuff. Um,
sure.
Now, like I say with forensics, but still, believe it or not, there's a lot of cases that just do not. I want to say I laugh because you know that a lot of these connections are made by that DNA genealogy match.
Yeah,
So I tell everybody, if you have a cousin or an uncle who wigs out because you tell them you just gave a sample for your genealogy, you better watch him
yeah,
close because that's how they sometimes link them up. They they never end up going to prison or DNA'd or anything like that. In other words, if they put that DNA from the victim, there's no match
yeah,
to that person. But then if you have a family member that does give some type of sample, they have found connections that way because they're, of course, the DNA, there's a remnant of it because of familial tie. So I
yeah,
say, you ever have a family member, like especially an older one, that goes, "What, you're doing what?" It's like,
yeah,
what?
yeah,
That might
exactly.
be it. Yeah, I think that's how they got the I'm sure you heard of him, the Golden, well, he had different names, Golden Gate Killer, or he was out in California, and I think they caught him like in 2018. As a matter of fact, this guy was on a rampage. At some point, they thought there was more than one killer, and it turned out there's one guy.
Yeah,
And how he got caught, he had stopped. I think he was accused of raping, murder, and he would even break into a person's house and like leave a door unlocked, like a way to get in. He prepared
okay,
this. Bottom line, he got snagged because of that, because they had DNA evidence,
yeah,
but he never popped up on any like somebody that's been convicted or any other crime. And because of a genealogy match, that's how they caught him after many, many, many years. I want to say he was active like in the 70s and 80s in California.
huh,
So, that let me tell you something. As far as modern storytelling, it changes the dynamics, like you said. Whereas before, if you wrote this story back in the 70s or the 80s, they didn't have to worry about the same thing. Now, like what you're writing, how do you incorporate where they have, like you said, cameras everywhere and
yeah. I used some of the technology in the story, so I used the phones. The phones was like a big thing, and yeah, there
mhm,
were cameras too. But this killer was like very. He was staying within rules, so like it would look like he was just a normal person when he was kind of placing his victims. Because in this story, he puts the victims in public places. He does it, and you go,
okay,
how the hell did he do that? So I walked through exactly how he did it, and when you read it, you're like, oh, that just looks like a normal person, but he was putting a dead body in this
right.
public
In other
place.
words, so which by the way, a lot of them, what is it, that Ted Bundy? If you looked at that guy, you would never think that guy was a serial killer. He looked like
Yeah,
this young man,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
that normal appearance takes you a long way when you're a serial killer.
Or if you're just doing normal things, like I
Yeah.
mean, for example, the first killing is in New Orleans, which can be a party place, and he looks like
Mhm.
just a drunk person. He looks like he's him and the victim he has. They look drunk, which is a common thing that you would see
Sure.
on Bourbon Street. But then all of a sudden, it comes up a little bit later. Oh, that drunk person he was with is one of his victims, and he
Sure.
just kind of put it in a place
Yeah.
that no one pays attention to it. As long as no one's paying attention to it, then yeah, then you
Yeah,
can
everybody's having their own good
do it.
time, and it's like you said, oh, those pair of people stumbling around. Sure, I'm stumbling around myself a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
yeah,
In a party atmosphere, like you said, like New Orleans, people don't give it. I hate to say it, even nowadays, sometimes people are so wigged out that they're like, I don't want to know nothing about this. Like,
yeah,
don't see anything. Don't, no, I don't want to know. So yeah, there's a. Now let me ask you, this person ultimately, well, let's see, I don't want you to give your book away either. Because I'm just
yeah,
thinking, oh, what, you're saying basically that he was. doing these murders mostly to bring that person to where he was at?
Yeah, he was. Well, he was doing. He had a line of murders going to where the person that he has a relationship with is living,
Okay. Okay.
and in that instance, he was setting that one of the protagonists up.
So he had this, in other words, he had this already planned out
And he
that
planned
far
it
out.
out. He planned
Okay.
it out,
Okay. Okay.
but he was showcasing his killing ability at the same
I
time.
see.
So I kind of wanted to have a serial killer that wanted to brag, kind of like, oh, I
Yes.
can do it. I can do anything because I haven't gotten a. Because you find out he has a trail of murders in his past. So in this
Okay.
story, he's just killing a few people, but he has a past of killing more than a few people. So he feels very confident, like, wow, I'm a professional at this. This
So
is
he's
like
been
my
getting away
thing.
with it for a while then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you find out about that. He has kind of, he's a talker. I made my serial killer a talker. So
Let me ask you,
kind of
does
had
he,
to
I'm
read.
gonna ask this, does he, is he a loner or is he a family guy that's pretending like when you, because you're
No,
saying
he's a loner. He's a loner.
he's a loner, just a normal loner kind.
Yeah, he's the
Okay.
kind of the one that. And I wanted to make because I was thinking serial killers have to be. I was thinking about what makes serial killers unique too. In some ways, is I feel like they might not be like super rich, but I feel like they got to be comfortable enough that they're not stressed out about money. So this
Sure.
serial killer is one that's money's not a stress. So he can put all his thought into the process of how
Absolutely.
do I do what I want to do, which is I'm a killer and I want to do that. Right. So money's not a stress. So I felt like I think he needs to be comfortable. And some serial killers I've read about are comfortable people, right? They're not in a situation of like I need to think about food and rent and blah blah blah, right?
Right. No, especially if they portray like what you said, that profile of a normal average person. It's, if they're intelligent, they maybe have a good job, or
Yeah,
or some situation in life, like you said, that they're not stressing about, hey, pay my rent. No, that's not there. So that gives them time to like, yeah, figure things like what you were describing as like, I'm going to do this and this, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this.
yeah.
And
They
yeah.
need to have means about doing the things they're gonna do.
Well,
It's like
no, you know what? I tell everybody, you know what? Sometimes, when I'm talking the normies here,
yeah,
sometimes you get caught up so much in living from day to day that you don't have time or brain power to start doing that deep
yeah,
planning, like what we're talking about, where, I'm going to get away with murder
yep.
various times, because it's like, man, that's why I'm saying there, that, you hear about these people that kill somebody else on impulse, something happens, a fight, you know, infidelity, revenge, 9 times out of 10, they get caught because they didn't plan it. They just acted on the moment, on the emotion.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, is there, all this time that he's doing these murders, are the police ever close to figuring it out it's him, or never? They're just like totally in.
Yeah. Well, I had that question before, dude, because a lot of times people say like, "Oh, with these kind of storytelling, that you find these police officers are like inept. They're not very good at
Mhm.
what they're doing." So I didn't go down that road. I think the main police force, yeah, but one of the protagonists is actually a detective in the story,
Okay.
and he
Yeah, I
becomes
saw that. I
involved.
read that.
Yeah, and he becomes involved in it. One, he wants to protect his friends because his friends are going to explore this. So he wants to be like, okay, we're a group and we're going to try to find this killer. And because he's not assigned to the case, but he's using his skills to help.
Okay.
And but he's really frustrated because he has a past too back in Los Angeles, where he came from before Houston, where he had tragedy occur to him. And what scares him is he gonna have tragedy again in this situation. So he feels at times like, yes, I'm a smart person. I'm trying to solve this, but I can't solve it. And ultimately, it's coming up to him. How does he chase and track this killer? Because he's the one that has the most experience in this, but he also
Mhm.
has failure from the past.
Sure.
So he's trying to resolve that in this whole kind of cat, like this chasing mouse cat chasing game that I put up in the story. So there is a detective, and he's a central part of the story. He's one of the protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah, that's Peter, and he's a big part of the story.
Right.
Yeah,
And people don't realize what, especially when we're talking about that now more modern times, jurisdictions talk to each other.
yeah,
You know, like one time I was looking in on this. There's just a murder that occurred like in the 1970s, and later on they realized and the reason why is that it be eventually like in 2018 when they have these cold cases that they revive, they
yeah,
realized they had lost they lost the whole thing. But
yeah,
originally it went kind of cold because they killed a couple in New York, but they dumped their bodies in New Jersey. It's like whoever the killer was smart enough to realize when you kill some, and that's exactly what happened. The jurisdictions kept fighting, saying, "No, it's yours," but no, it's yours. No, they got killed in
yeah,
New York. No, they got killed in New Jersey. You know, and like whoever did it, you're thinking, okay, this person, whoever it was, planned it out enough to know I'm going to kill him here, but I'm going to take him across state lines because I know these two departments are going to start fighting with each other. Who's going to take the case? And in that confusion, I'm going to get away with it.
yeah,
Which, by the way, they haven't found, they never. And like I said, 2018, I think they tried to they reopened it, and then they started looking for the box of evidence, and it's disappeared. But yes, like when you were talking about the planning and things of that nature, that all you need is, one guy, the killer in this case, who's saying, okay, how can I make this a little bit difficult for the authorities?
yeah,
Kill him one place and dump him in another.
yeah. Well, I think what's scary is I think there are probably a lot of people who can get away with murder. I mean, it's probably happening. We just don't read about it. But
Oh, sure.
I mean, if all the people who are really trained to kill people in the world, like are kind of our secret agents, like
Well,
they could probably kill people if they wanted. I mean, that's probably one of my next stories. If I go down this and I wanted to create another story, because I set this up as like these three characters could continue to kind of have another story and
okay.
solve things. And I was thinking about that. Like the ultimate serial killer is the one that is like a Navy SEAL or something like that. Someone who's like trained to do this, go in
Sure.
and take people out. That's
Yeah.
the scary serial killer.
Yeah.
That's the one that could like do some real damage, right? Well,
I want to say the most scariest serial killer I can think of, which I think are this is my theory. I say there's a bunch of serial killers that nobody ever knew they were a serial killer. Why?
yeah,
Now, besides not getting caught, that is obviously they knew how to keep their mouth shut. Because a lot of guys get caught because they'll go to prison for something else and they talk.
yeah,
Oh, that thing, that was me.
yeah,
And then their prison mate goes, trying to get favors. They number one, they pretend to be normal, like what your character is. They're smart and they learn to keep their mouth shut.
yeah,
All right. And in some cases, they're smart enough also to move, to like leave the area
yeah,
where they were committing their crimes. And I that's my theory. I say there's for all the ones that are caught or like, we think there's a bunch that nobody's ever even knows about them,
yeah,
you know. And that what you did, that example you gave of the you have somebody that maybe was trained to kill people,
yeah,
whether with a firearm or but with our hands or something. It's like, well, that'll do it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, because it's like you always see these movies where people's like, "Oh, we got to get rid of the body," and that's what you're talking about with these cold cases. Your first
Yeah,
example is like they dismembered this woman, poor woman, and then
yeah,
they still got DNA from her eventually. But I mean, that's just like everyone. If I could only imagine if you killed someone, it's like the first thing you're thinking about. Well, one, how do I get rid of the body, and then two, how do I make sure there's no trail to go down to where the body could be. I mean, if you did such a good job of getting rid of the body, and there's no body, there's still in this day and age, they could still show that you killed that body by seeing like some camera action or
hmm
seeing this type of evidence. So you would have to be paranoid about like, oh my
Well,
God.
now that thing with the pinging of the phone, I know they've used that in some cases.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there could be all these like bits of piece of evidence. I mean, yeah, the body would be one thing, getting rid of the body, and then you got a whole list of other
Yes.
things that you
Let
have
me tell
to
you something,
even think
bodies,
about.
even for a man, especially in your case where you're saying some of his victims were men,
Yeah,
a dead body it's difficult to move.
yeah,
Not because I've moved dead bodies, but because I have done, um, physical exams where they give you something that's like a dead body that you
yeah,
gotta drag it,
yeah.
something that has, like, totally, so even for a man to carry another man, that's a difficult thing to do.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So let me ask you, does he I don't want you to give the book away. Does anybody ever catch on? Because you're saying that he would pose them in certain ways in public, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody understand what his message was at any point?
Uh, he tells his message to one of the protagonists in the
Okay.
story in the storyline. So no one he leaves messages on the bodies,
Oh,
and
okay,
and
okay.
they're cryptic. So, but he does leave messages on the bodies that that's trying to give evidence to like, oh, this is my art, and this is the story behind my art. So each victim is in a setting
Okay.
and set up with like a certain prop or certain messages like scarred into the victim's body, be their chest, things like that. So it's almost like like just written there.
Okay, so and but is it something that people need to, like, understand his because you're saying he's got this mythology idea.
Yeah, and I kind of give the reader a heads up because the
Okay,
names of my chapters are based on what
okay.
messages he's putting on the body. So
Okay.
so like I told you about the Tantalus story. So that there's a chapter called Tantalus, and then there's a story called Icarus. Icarus is another famous story
Yes.
where the father kind of him and his son gets out of the maze.
Yes.
They have the wings of wax, and he warns his son to like not go too high in the sky to the sun
Yes.
because it'll melt. So his son doesn't listen because he's too proud, right? He's too like, oh, nothing's gonna happen to me, and that's another reflection of life. Like sometimes we can just be too proud of ourselves, and then we can fall because
Yeah,
of
let me
yeah,
show the this is the cover of your book
yeah.
on
There's the protagonist. Yeah,
okay, The World is Angry. Um which by the way, the synopsis I read is what you have there. This is as you could tell, this is on Amazon, right? Is
yes.
it available on
Amazon
Amazon?
and book, Barnes and Noble, the iBook, Apple Store. Yeah, you can find a number of
Yeah,
different
there it
online
is.
platforms. Yeah,
There it is. Okay. All right. So basically what you're saying is you're going to be doing maybe like a type of series with these characters in the
yeah.
future?
I've thought about it. I mean, if the book is more successful, then yeah, I would definitely would love to do a series because it's kind of I have those kind of stories in my head, and I think readers would
Mhm.
like it. I mean, the readers that I've talked to, they really like the story, and I mean, they like the way they got really attached to the characters. So, and I'm attached to the characters. Whenever you write, each
No, let
character
me
is kind of like a
Yeah,
point
I
of
know that.
view.
Yeah, that in other words, they take on a for lack of a better word, they're three-dimensional. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
that's and it's the and
And
let me ask you something real quick. How about conflict between these characters? Is there conflict between
uh,
them?
well, yeah. There's conflict, but there's also kind of like since there's two guys and a girl, there's a triangle there, right?
Ah, okay, there we
So,
go.
so
Okay.
I like triangles because I think it's very common in life, and
Mhm.
so I explored that, and I just finished my second book, which is this was a psychological thriller. My second book, and I just finished it. I'm trying to get literary agents now, so I'm going through that process. But it's a sci-fi action book. Um,
Okay, you
so
are. What kind of sci-fi are we talking here?
it's about two. Well, it's another kind of friend thing. So this is like two friends, and they have a startup, an AI startup company, and their technology is they found a way to code a certain type of robotic functionality, if you will, where we can kind of you can put it inside people's bodies, and you can either control their minds by making them do things, or
Mm-hmm.
one of the protagonists says, "Well, there's a part of the brain that I want to explore that will help people evolve and to
Okay.
become better people." So there's a conflict there. Is one's like, "Well, I like this technology. I want to use it to control people and have people do what I want." And governments can see that too. Wow, if I
So
could have that type of
is
technology.
this let me ask you, is this like present day sci-fi or futuristic?
Present day in a lot of
Okay.
ways, because a lot of this AI technology is coming to life, where they can kind of tap into the brain by having. Well, right now it's kind of future, meaning like right now there's actually technology like I think Musk has done this with someone where he's put a chip in someone's brain, and
Yes.
they
Yes.
can like they can actually with their brain and using this chip can get things to move, like move their arms or move certain things,
Right.
they're
Yes.
paralyzed or whatever. So that technology's there, but I want to explore. Well, what if you were so smart and we had the technology where
Yeah. That's a which by the
power,
way is kind of scary
power of the
because
brain, if you will.
I think a lot of people they look at these advances.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go into the and they're always looking at the good end of it, the benefits
yeah,
part, and then there's always a sometimes a downside to it.
yeah,
That kind of later on it turns out that it like the Frankenstein monster,
yeah,
it kind of morphs into something else.
yeah, yeah. Sure. I mean, there's a lot of instances where you had good intentions, but they led to bad results, right? Things
Sure,
that carried
exactly.
in a way you didn't want to,
Yeah,
right?
that I want to say that's very more common than people realize about. Um, you know what? And sometimes people, in this case, um, I'll be honest with you that that scenario that you're painting about AI, and let me tell you, once upon a time that was
Yeah,
distant future sci-fi, but we got it basically on our doorstep right now.
yeah, exactly. It's something that's, I mean, probably in the next 50, 100 years, it's going to be a very different world, right? So,
Sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, I look at it this way, say, man, who wouldn't want a robot around the house that's going to do all the drudge work?
yeah,
But then you think of movies like I Robot. All of a sudden, the robot looks at you and goes, "You're not going anywhere." You're like, "What?"
yeah,
Because of course, we always look at at the um at the downside of scenarios like, yeah, what started out as like, "Hey, you don't have to clean your house anymore or mow the lawn. We'll have the robot do it for you."
yeah,
And then the next thing you know, the robot is like, "We're taking over," or whoever's down giving a download to the robot says, "We're taking over," and you know, it's always a little bit dramatic here, but so I was you got ahead of me. I was gonna ask you, do you have another book? But you already got the book.
yeah. I've got the book, but it hasn't been published yet. I'm still in that process of seeing about trying to land a literary agent, see if some
Okay.
book could be published a traditional way. So I'm just beginning that process.
So but these characters are nothing to do with the first book.
No, nothing to do. I had a sci-fi action story in my mind, and I was like, I want to explore this. So yeah, I
Okay.
did that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, for my podcast listeners, John, where can they find your work? Is it just on Amazon? Do you have a website? How they can they find you?
Yeah, it's mainly Amazon because that's mainly what a lot of people buy from. But Amazon,
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble, the iBook, Apple Store. There's other platforms, Goodreads. You
Yes.
can get it there. So yeah, there's those are the main areas that
Okay.
you can buy. Yep.
So you're just basically at this point, you're just waiting for a literary agent to go ahead and get started. Well, not this year or next year, then you're looking at releasing then your other book?
I would hope next year. It's kind of it's so competitive, so you just never know exactly if you can even land it. So
Mhm.
we'll see. You just
Do you have
try.
a title for it yet?
It's called Flight.
Oh,
Flight. Yeah.
Flight. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Again, thank you so much, John. It has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, and I want to wish you the best of luck in all your
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's been a joy to talk with you, and I've enjoyed it. So thank
Yes.
you.
Take care.
All right. All right.
Bye-bye. See? That's why, I'm into the cold case stuff just in and of itself, but I introduced it because I was looking at the story, which by the way is very good, and I'm thinking, let's face it, unfortunately, there's plenty of examples that you could draw. I don't want inspiration is not the right word I'm thinking of, but as far as where's my jumping off point for this character? Um, if you're looking for someone that psychopathic, sociopathic, someone, because remember, like I said, I think it's hard enough you're going to kill a person, period, period. But then, you have the moments where you say people kill another person in a moment of extreme anger, emotion. In other words, there's a connection between these people. Like I said, love, infidelity. You double cross me about money or business, or even sometimes I hate to say you took my parking space, whatever. But then if you're a normal human being, that is, and in other words, this is alien to you, how would you start to understand, let's say in this case, a serial killer who's killing people or person for, like, I don't even know who you are. You've never done anything against me, but I'm going to kill you. And in the example of John's book, I'm going to pose you. Basically you're using the person, besides the rush that the killer's getting by killing them. I'm going to use you because I'm working out this fantasy in my head of whatever, and plus I got a problem with this person. In other words, this person is not a person. In other words, how do you get to the moment where another person, there is no humanity there? That's why you can just kill them and say, well, you know what, and then I'm gonna plan this and I'm gonna pose them. And so I'm thinking, okay, the only way you can get is when you start reading about these stories of these I'm gonna say serial killers. Even though that term is really recent when it comes to the idea of murders, as far as that serial killer, because because sometimes you go into these true crime and you hear about, like I said, people that do family members in or stuff like that, but you see the motive. I mean, it's horrible what they do, but you see the motive. Neighbors, uh, people, marriages that those Black Widow people, or hey, I'm going to get a divorce, but I'm not going to let you have half my fortune, so I'm going to kill you, or I want half your fortune, so I'm going to kill you. But in other words, there's this history with the people that end up the murder and the murderee or the victim. But again, and I think this is what sometimes people are fascinated with the subject of serial killers, is when you really have no emotion behind it at all, not one way or the other. You either fixate on this person because you have an inner fantasy life. Sometimes maybe it's even a substitute for somebody when you were a child. Um, and again, like he was talking about, some of them, it satisfies, it feeds their soul on some level. There's something in their brain, whether you want to say, well, dopamine squirts out, but there's just something. And I want to say, if you read some of these profiles on some of these killers that have been identified, by the way, absolutely. Yes, I talk about the ones that you never know they existed. How's that? Because they never get caught and they learn how to keep their mouth shut. And more than likely, they crafted an appearance of normalcy very, very well. Very well. Whether they stayed permanently in an area for years and years and everybody thought, "Oh, he's a nice guy." They even sometimes have families, or they're smart enough that every few years they pick up and go and they move to another state, whatever. But they appear normal. When you look at them, you're going, "Oh, nice guy," or "Hey," not like that grunge. I don't know if, well, ones that watch the video version of this, the person that just by looking at them, you're like, "Oh my God, who?" You know, that in other words, they're smart enough to know, if I have this appearance, number one, depending on who their victims are, you're not going to come close to me. All right. You're not going to come close to me. So I'm not going to. appear scary. How's that? That's number one. Number two, your neighbors are going to be like, oh my God, that weird guy that lives, something. Let's put it this way. If something ever goes south, they're going to come and look for you because you're the weird guy that, that just because of the way you look, they're going to come knocking at your door. As a matter of fact, this is going to be again for my video people. All right. This is a picture of what these two killers of those two 14-year-old girls look like. This is, now look at this. Look at these guys. This is, like I said, the one on the, the one with the one eye bigger than the other. He died in 2019, and the other one next to him, Stein, died in 2009. And I guess it's really kind of sad because these men, apparently they'd had a lengthy criminal history, violent criminal history. And they lived, I want to say, into old age. All right. They lived into old age. They got to enjoy living. And by the way, as you could tell, both of these pictures are mugshots. And, you look at them now and you're like, if anything goes south, I'm going to be looking for these guys because they just give off that vibe. Like, but again, I want to say that, let me see, that there's a lot of the criminals, not like these guys, that they have a certain look. They're smart. I agree with him a lot of times to make sure that um, they're doing okay money-wise. And they craft like Gacy. He was like, he belonged to the JCs and would dress up as a clown and go visit kids in the hospital. Because everybody, the normies think, how could somebody be killing guys and stuffing their bodies under their house and then at the same time be visiting kids at the hospital dressed as a clown? And that's the thing. Monsters don't always look like monsters. As a matter of fact, the really good monsters take pains to look anything like that. And I think that, and I want to say, like this case that, yeah, they finally found out, because I had researched, when I researched that case of the canal murders, or what they call the flat tire murders here in South Florida. There was several of them, and at that time it was still a cold case, and I was glad to see. And I'm thinking, um, and unfortunately, the 1970s, where there was so much hitchhiking, I think it must have been like serial killer paradise, because your victims were basically wanting to get to go with you. All right. Um, and I want to say, unfortunately, it hurt a lot of the cases, because sometimes all they had was a white van. Hello, a white van. Two girls that were known for lying to their parents, which is, God, any 14-year-old does that. But what they were out thumbing rides and just got into the wrong van. I mean, sometimes now you think of it and it's like, who would do that? But back then, that was like, hey. And obviously, and this is the thing, they had already gotten a write-up for a guy on a motorbike, and I guarantee you that they had been hitchhiking before and nothing ever happened to them. And of course, when you're that age, you don't think anything is going to ever happen to you, right? So here we go, back to that scenario of, let's say, present day. How's this? I think a lot of people say, well, now with the advances of DNA, forensics, it's going to be really difficult for people to get away with murder. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of space, a lot of land and space across the United States where there are no cameras. Sometimes you don't even have a cell signal, for the love of Mike. There's nothing. Okay. Where people disappear. People disappear, you know? And it's one of those things that Unfortunately, how's this? For every, back at the, I want to say in the turn of the century and things like that, the only forensics they had was basically fingerprints and sometimes dental work. Okay. So a lot of times victims, they were decapitated and their hands were taken off. Why? Because this was a way to identify them. This was, we're talking your turn of the century, around that time. Every once in a while, I had one case that happened in the 1920s where basically they identified the girl. She had a tattoo back then, like was the 1920s. She had a tattoo, a little tattoo, like a round little tattoo with an R, I think it was, on her leg, which was very unusual. By the way, back then women didn't use tattoos. So, but in other words, there's the killers always figure out something how to get around the problem. Besides the fact of not letting the body be found, is like if they find it, I'm going to make it really difficult because if they don't know who it is, it's not going to lead them to me. And usually that indicates like this was a person this person knew because they're going to say, we can identify who the victim is. We know in what direction to look. All right. I was looking at all these cases, everybody thinks of when Jack the Ripper and all this. You know what? Around that times there were tons of dismembered bodies of women coming up in the Thames River because everybody thinks that these victims of the Jack the Ripper, um, all these prostitutes. But if you look at the history prior and after, there was a bunch of very like grisly murders, dismemberment right there in London, not necessarily Whitechapel, but in London, that some of them were prostitutes or, risky lifestyle. Some people say, hey, this was the handiwork of who the Jack the Ripper is. That recently they kind of think it's uh, a guy that was. I'll bring it up the next time. I'll tell you what. And then other times, like I said, there was that case of Pearl Bryan, which it gained prominence when the guys from Ghost Adventures went to Bobby Mackey's World of Music, and supposedly she was one of the ghosts. And it turned out around the turn of the century, they found her decapitated body, and they never found her head. But anyway, originally when they discovered the body, they couldn't find the head, so they didn't know who it was. And her body was found very close to a fort, and they thought originally that it was a prostitute, connection to the fort. So yeah, everybody was like concerned, but they were like thinking fallen woman, that kind of deal. And believe it or not, the way she got ID'd, and which changed the whole direction of the case, was she had a very little foot, a size 3. And there was a gentleman named Mr. Pook who ran, I think it was Greencastle. Was it in Greencastle, I believe, who ran the shoe shop. And he recognized her because the police kind of made an effort like, hey, we found this woman and she was dressed like this and she's these little, you know, those little bootlets, that boot kind of things that they used to wear around, I want to say 1895 or something like that. And he says, hey, I remember when I received those, and there was one person who wore such a small shoe, and her name is Pearl Bryan. That's how they ID'd her. Okay. Because what? He had taken her head off for that very reason. They saw her face. They could recognize that was going to lead to them, which 2 men eventually hung for the murder. Okay. And believe it or not, sometimes that's the way it works out. But yeah, what's the and I hate to say it, but I don't know. I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but God, I want to say that sometimes, and I guess the only way I can describe it is when you've been around long enough. I look at some of these movies sometimes, especially that they're ultra violent or slasher films, even the ones that started coming out in the 80s. And it was like, once upon a time, they, yeah, people got killed or in the movies, but they would like, show a little bit of blood against the wall, but you would never see the actual killing of a person. And it's we've become desensitized to it, I wanna say. And it's even as kids that grow up, and it's just and even the video games, which a lot of times they're killing people and whatever, and I look at it, and I think, "Man, part of this has gotta contribute to." Don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna say it's gonna make you a killer, but there's something that I think that whereas before people would be appalled, like, "Oh my god, somebody getting killed," or you would see a movie like, "Oh my god." Because even now I look at this and I was like, "Man, this is not entertainment. Oh, forget this." Um, there's something that what we were talking about, that taboo that we have amongst either a moral compass or society, that I think even as human beings, we just, like, reject it. Um, it's it's eroding. That's eroding, alright? And it's a shame because I think every once in a while, this is what produces some of these, people that whether because they were traumatized as kids, they were abused, in some cases, some were born this way, lack of, conscience, or just something that happens to them. That jump, how's that? That jump from being angry, um, they do it easier. Why? Because, hey, they've seen it, and in some cases, even now, I'm sure a lot of people are aware. Even some of the fame that some of these murderers get when they get arrested, um, it's like appealing in some weird way, and by the way, I've read of stories because I do a lot of research. I've read of stories. This is murders that took place in the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s, where some of these murderers they wanted, because back then it was newspapermen who were being set out. They wanted to be in that fame thing. It's not a recent thing like everybody thinks, oh, everybody's filming somebody else. No, 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 no. You had guys, and I'm going to say not all the time because there was women in there also, but that they were like when they were getting ignored. It's like, hey, yeah, I'll give my story. The newspaper, the reporters, come in, and they were, because they wanted that fame. Part of them wanted to, like, I want to get that recognition. And you're like, do you realize you're sinking your ship real quick? And remember, back then, a lot of times they would end up being executed, by the way. In other words, there was the death penalty, and the death penalty was quick. Maybe you'd get one appeal, but usually within a year, 2 years the most, you were either going to be sitting in the electric chair or getting hung. And something about, I want to get recognition and I want to see my name in the newspaper. And even now, I want to say that part of that, what John was describing about his fictional serial killer, I want to get recognition. I want to be known. I don't want to be ignored. Like, I'm so brilliant. Somebody's got to be aware of this. Well, yeah, that's pretty true to life. Yeah, telling you. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you like this show. I hope you like this interview with John Vines. Please, I will put a link to his um, the book site on Amazon. Go and check it out. And then, like you said, he's already got another one that's probably gonna sounds like probably next year. And and yeah, think about all the I don't know, just suspicious looks at your neighbor. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. Um, sometimes it's the real normal ones you gotta worry about, not the weird ones. Anyway, sign up for my newsletter on Substack. Go to mppelliser.com. Go to miamighostchronicles.com. Again, links to everything are there, whether it's the stories of the supernatural story time, Nightshade Diary, eerie news, stranger than fiction stories, which is articles. Um, everything is there. Links to everything is there. All right. Like I said, I will be putting out the Halloween show. And then probably I am going to do the Christmas horror story, ghost stories reading that I do every year. This is going to be the third year I do it. And then before you know it, we'll be in 2026. And time flies when you're having fun and even when you're not. So, anyway, thank you all for coming and spending this time with me. And I will be seeing you next week. Till next time.